Hello and welcome back to our Skill Update Lab channel. Today I'm going to show you some basic ideas of Caro-Kann and the start of many different variations. So, the Caro-Kann starts with e4 and c6. More than 80% of the games continues with d4, and it is the most fighting and most theoretical line for white, as it fights for the center. Black has to respond with d5. And now there are three things the white can do with the e-pawn. It can either take the black's d-pawn, advance to e5, or defend it. Let's first look at taking the d-pawn. Now black recaptures with the c-pawn, as this is the purpose of the c6 move. Now this is called the exchange variation as the pawns exchange. There is many possible continuations and it will all be covered in a separated video, but there is also one more very fighting line with c4 and that is called Panabotvinnik attack, but it will also be explained in a separate video. Back to the e4 pawn. The pawn doesn't have to take on d5, it can also get protected. This is usually done with knight c3 or d2, it doesn't matter, because on the next move the black will take the e-pawn anyway. The knight will recapture. And now there are three most fighting moves for black. There is bishop f5, knight d7, or knight f6. Knight f6 is the main line, and after white takes, transposes to either Bronstein-Larsen variation or Korchnoi variation. I will cover each variation in separate videos. Knight d7 is called Karpov variation and it will also be covered in a separate video. The third way of fighting knight e4 is to play bishop f5. This is called classical variation and I will for sure cover it deeper in a separate video, but this is the way it usually continues. This is the most common position after the classical variation. It gives a lot of attacking chances for both teams. The white's idea is to attack on king's side, while black's idea is to attack on the queen's side. Black might begin its attack earlier, because its knights aren't stopping him, as they do for white. However, e4 pawn in the beginning can also be protected by bishop d3 or f3. f3 is called fantasy variation. It will be all covered in a separate video, but it usually goes on like this. If bishop d3 is used to defend e4, we capture and bishop recaptures. The games might continue with knight f6 and bishop f3, but I will maybe cover this in a separate video as there is many possible options. The e4 pawn can also just advance to e5 and this is called advance variation. The game might continue with bishop f5 or pawn c5. However, in many positions, the plan is to trade off our light square bishop and try to create a break on c5, which will weaken the d4 and e5 pawns. I will cover both in advance variation separate video. I hope you enjoyed, learned something new, and that you will, if you are interested, check out the theory of the previously mentioned variations.